Good afternoon and welcome to the midweek edition of Vogan's European Outlook. It is Wednesday the 2nd of October. Before we continue with the video, be sure to hit that like button, and if you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button as well. Lots of content getting thrown out here on the channel, unbiased, unhyped weather content that you perhaps don't see anywhere else on YouTube. Look at the big picture, not just the UK, Ireland and Europe, but globally as well. Obviously, we've got the Tropical Outlook every Saturday, and also every Sunday we have the live stream, which is fantastic. I absolutely love doing the live stream. It's been going now since February of earlier this year. I was going to say last year, but earlier this year, and it's expanding the overall scope of the channel. But anyway, in today's video, I want to actually look specifically at the month of September. The statistics have come out from the Met Office. We're going to look at that. We're also going to look at the CDAS data, which kind of actually goes back through the month of September. We're going to go through that and show you just exactly how extreme this month has turned out to be, because we've seen some very, very warm temperatures. We've seen unusually cold temperatures. We've seen exceptional rainfall, as you know, and I just want to kind of pan through that a little bit. We're going to look at coolweather.com as well, because it shows the records that were achieved, both cold records as well as warm records. It skips through a little bit on the quick side, but every dot that is representing a record or a near record temperature for Europe. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the CDAS data as well. And the statistics, I will get there. It's a hard word to say, statistics. So anyway, this is the month of September. This was, by the way, the month of August. And the contrast couldn't be greater. We had a record wet August up the western side of Scotland. We had as much as over 700 millimetres of rain falling in Skye. We had 300 millimetres of rain falling in the Glasgow area. So record-breaking wet conditions here, and we had a very dry August over England and Wales, and the contrast between August and September really couldn't be much more stark. Obviously, we've seen 10 counties record the wettest September on record. Some counties, I believe it was Bedfordshire, but we'll look at the stats in a second, recorded its wettest month of any calendar month, which is pretty remarkable actually. But look at Scotland, drier than average with exceptions up around the Murray, parts of northwest Aberdeenshire. We've seen a slightly wetter than average month of September. We also had it right around the Wick area, up in the very far northeast corner of Caithness. We've seen a wetter than average. But generally, the areas that seen record wet August has now seen a dry September. Even Northern Ireland seeing a dry September. But look at England and Wales. This is just an astonishing 350% of average rainfall. You don't get much more extreme than that. But you're asking the question, how the heck has this happened? Why have we seen this big, complete flip in terms of record-breaking rainfall? Really, when you think about this for a second, record wet August in the northwest. Then we had a drier September, but a record wet September across the bulk of England and Wales. Well, actually, see when you look at what happened with the North Atlantic Oscillation, which is a measure of pressure between Iceland and the Azores. Back in August, we had a record strong positive North Atlantic Oscillation. And essentially, this really tells you the story, the reasons why we had such a wet northwest, dry southeast. It was warm, it was dry during the month of August. Actually, folks down in the southeast and East Anglia saying, it actually wasn't that bad of a summer, really. While the further north you went over the UK, the cooler, the more unsettled, and the more disappointing the overall summer was as well. But August really kind of reinforced, essentially, the summer that had just gone, because we've got this deep negative over Iceland here. So the northwest of the UK was closest to low pressure systems. The jet stream was positioned to the northwest. During the month of September, it's positioned to the south. We reverse the upper air pattern from deep negative to strong positive, and that then forces the jet further south. And obviously with a lot of warmth, very warm SSTs, both in the Atlantic and the Mediterranean basin. When you shift that jet stream further south into a warmer, more humid, more juicy environment, then in a sense, the result is record-breaking rainfall. It really doesn't take a meteorologist or a climatologist to really work this out, that it's not massively surprising if you get a record positive NAO during the month of August and then flip on its head to a record strong negative North Atlantic oscillation. You're going to get extreme weather as a result of that. And that is essentially what we've had. The argument could be what has caused the flip. I've went on to say for a few weeks now anyway, that the shift in the Southern Oscillation Index in the Pacific may have helped switch this oscillation between positive to negative. Also the Mann-Julian oscillation. I keep harping on about this MJO, but I think it really does hold a real key in terms of driving the mid to high latitude weather pattern around the world when it's amplified and when it's in favourable phases. And it's been stuck in phase 1. We've seen an amplification phase 5 and phase 6 that built the ridge northwards over Europe, and that really started to set the tone for extreme temperature fluctuation and also rainfall. So I want to show you this here. First of all, this is off the CDAS data set, and this is from weatherbell.com. Let's go back to the 1st of September, and we're going to play through this, and you can see the extremity of both warmth as well as cold. And this really was, as well as it being a record wet September for many parts of central and southern UK, it also was a pretty extreme month in terms of fluctuating in temperature. We went from, the warmest day of the entire year in parts of Scotland to some of the coldest early September nights since the 1980s. So some pretty wild stuff, actually. It has been a fascinating month, I must admit. But you see here, we'll play through this loop. So this is us skipping through the month of September. We started off with that warmth at the beginning, then a little bit of cool, but then we built the warmth over the heart of Europe. And then once what happened is we had lower pressure down to the south, and this heat that was building over Central Europe. Look at these anomalies, 12, 13, 14 Celsius above average, while the UK and Ireland was slightly below average. But watch what happens as we move into the end of week 1 of September. Some of that heat that was over Germany, Poland, Scandinavia was cooking as well. Then we started to see lower pressure down over Biscay that produced cool conditions, wet conditions, most of France, most of Iberia. But that cut off area of low pressure south of the UK then started to act like a wheel, drawing that warmth out of Central Europe and into the UK and Ireland. And then we've seen 27, 28 Celsius temperature for the first time this year into particularly western areas of Scotland. Then down came wave number 1 of 2 Arctic outbreaks into the west of Europe, and this set the tone for the record rainfall over Central and Eastern Europe. Lots of heat, lots of humidity built up, not just over days or weeks, but months. The whole summer was baking hot across the Balkans, eastern areas of Europe. Drive Arctic air south over this region, develop an area of low pressure. That low becomes trapped underneath that block to the north. Then factor in a 28 Celsius Mediterranean sea surface temperature, and you had all the fuel in the world to drive a 300-400 millimeter rainstorm into parts of Europe. Austria, for example, seeing epic amounts of rainfall. We've seen the damage, we've seen the destruction that was caused due to that event. That low became trapped underneath that block to the north. And that, in my opinion anyway, was a direct response to that phase 6 MJO that allows high pressure to build over Europe, but it also lifted northwards as we progressed through the period. So in came the cold air. We had some very, very cold nights indeed across the vast majority of Western Europe. Look at these here. We're switching from 12 to 14 above to 12 to 14 below average in the space of about 7 to 10 days here. This is astonishing. air mass coming into the west of Europe. Look at all the while the extreme heat that's then getting pushed east and northeast over Eastern Europe here. This is about as extreme of a pattern as you'll get. And this was the case 12Z Friday the 13th of September. And then we'll play through the loop. In comes the next spell of warm conditions here. We went back to summer once again. And you can see that here. Maybe just not quite as potent as the first one, but nonetheless, we reversed back to summer weather pattern again. Then the pattern almost repeated completely. In came the high again, down went the low. It shifted from but the Balkans to Biscay once again. We had more heavy rain across the south of the UK. Then wave number 2 of cold came in at the back end of September here. Again, not as potent, not quite as extreme as the first one, but nonetheless, you could see the amount of cold that was coming in, and I pressed the wrong button, so I kind of messed that up. But you get the overall idea as to what was taking place. I want to show you this here. This is pretty cool, actually. This is the last 30 days across Europe in particular. Now, it goes fast, unfortunately. It annoys me a wee bit. It's too quick. Wish it wasn't as quick, but let's blow this up, right? And let's look at Europe. Is it going to show me Europe? It's just globally. Where's Europe? Past month. So this is the last month. So look at all these dots representing record warmth. Central, western areas of Europe here. I wish it wasn't as fast. Look at all these records that are falling. Then, as we've seen the Arctic air coming in, we go from record heat to record cold. So watch this here. Look at all the red dots in central areas of Europe, Eastern Europe. As that Arctic air drove into the west of Europe, we've seen record heat as a response. Look at all these blue dots now starting to appear. These are near records or records. That's that Arctic air mass coming down, first of all. Then we started to see warming conditions. But that was an impressive Arctic air mass coming in for sure. Then we see more record warmth. Then towards the end of September, we see more record-breaking cold coming in. But September really was a pretty astonishing month in terms of weather, for sure. Across not just the UK and Ireland, but across most of Europe also, with record rain, record heat, and record cold all thrown in for good measure in the space of about 4 weeks. So that's pretty cool stuff, isn't it? Like I said, I wish it was not quite as fast as that is. So anyway, record-breaking rainfall for some this September. Remember, the northern UK was actually below average. It has been the wettest September on record for some counties, according to provisional Met Office figures, though not national monthly records have been broken. England, and more specifically southern England, has been particularly wet compared to average. 10 English counties experienced their wettest September on record. For Bedfordshire and Oxfordshire, September 2024 was the wettest calendar month in the county's history, and the series dating back to 1836. That is a pretty big deal, actually, when you think about that. But although September has been exceptionally wet in southern and central areas, Scotland and Northern Ireland have been drier than average, balancing out the rainfall for the UK as a whole to 25% above the long-term meteorological average. Temperatures and sunshine hours have been closer to average, though again with some regional differences. So let me kind of just quickly skip through so that I'm not just reading the entire article. But some counties more than 300% of more average. 10 English counties, like I've said, record rainfall totals. England seeing quite a contrast to Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it was below average. So yeah, we'll just skip through this here real quick. But like I say, contrast incredible, especially when you compare it to the month of August. And then I want to kind of actually show you this. This is interesting as well. Below average temperatures. Overall, September saw a below average temperature for the UK as a whole. I want to point something out to you. A couple of days ago there, I put out that we're actually on track. We've had 3 out of the last 4 months below average for the UK. That is a fact. That is information straight from the Met Office. But I think some people are getting confused by the central England temperature, which is a smaller area. Granted, it's in the heart of England, but I'm not looking at just specifically England. I'm looking at the UK as a whole. So actually, it is fact that 3 of the last 4 months have been below average for the UK, and this is actually proof of that. with a mean temperature of 12.7. It is 0.3 Celsius, marginally so, I get that, but 3 points Celsius below the long-term meteorological average. Temperatures were slightly lower than average in Scotland and Northern Ireland, while they were slightly warmer than average, I believe, in southern and central England. The month began on a warm note with above average temperatures persisting for the first week. However, the second week, Arctic air moved in. Third week saw a return of above average temperatures, as we know, and places in western Scotland reaching 25 before a return of much cooler conditions in the final week. And this is how the temperature anomaly chart looks like. So you can see slightly below average for the majority of Scotland, particularly central and eastern areas, northeastern England as well, but down around East Anglia. I think England was average actually, but the parts of East Anglia was slightly above average. Sunshine-wise, this is actually quite interesting. I was saying this to my wife Lindsay that we had a sunnier than average September, but yet it was actually below average temperature for the month, which I thought was a slightly interesting one because you would expect it to be duller, therefore cooler, but actually we were above average in terms of sunshine, yet we had below average temperatures. We had some fairly cool days, and also we had quite a lot of single-digit nights, especially here at Vogan Weather HQ. And no surprise, given the amount of rain we've seen, it's been a duller than average September overall. But June, July was both below average. Now September joins that interesting little trend that we've got going at the moment. August was slightly above average, but even across the north, it was a below average August, because the summer actually didn't. My meteorological summer did not produce a temperature above 24.1, I think it was, for the entire summer season, which is quite interesting actually. But the warmest day was actually in May. Then that was followed by a 24.4 during the month of September. So warmest days up here at the house here was actually in May and the month of September. Last year we had 28 Celsius, and that was the warmest temperature of the entire year for myself. These are my statistics for my weather station. So the maximum was 24.4, warmest since a 26.1 was recorded back in May. Low temperature 1.8. And what was interesting about this, that average temperature there was 11.0 Celsius. That's a full 2 Celsius colder than last September, which I thought was quite interesting. But anyway, let's end real quick by, this is the latest Manjulian oscillation, stuck in phase 8, but it is kind of fading into the null phase at the moment. Looking at the Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation, you can see here we're well into the tank here of negative, and the NAO is also running firmly in negative territory, and that's going to continue through a good chunk of this month. The tropics is something that we're going to need to keep a pretty close eye on. We have got Hurricane Kirk. That looks as if some of the models are taking it up towards the UK later next week. So we'll look at the details of the tropics and the pattern that we've got through the remainder of this week and into next week. We'll look at that in a bit more detail in tomorrow's video. But certainly the tropics are becoming much more involved with a very powerful negative Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation. This is going to be quite an interesting month overall. Cool and wet, remember, is the forecast that I've put out back at the end of September. So we'll wait and see how that plays out. And anyway, that's it for today. Like, share, and subscribe. See you next time with more. Bye for now.